Today we're taking a look at a character from a separate continuity from Larry Hama's A Real American Hero, something that I've been enjoying quite a bit, but to date haven't done many videos on, so let's fix that. Let's take a look at Skybound and Image Comics' Energon universe, and one brand new character named Risk. With the new G.I. Joes having ongoing series having kicked off, recently, spinning out of the Duke, Cobra Commander, Scarlet, and Destro miniseries, the G.I. Joe team book tells the tale of America's daring special mission force. With the new team being stood up by Hawk and Duke, it's the perfect time to introduce a new character, or two, and since we're talking new continuity, spin some tropes and paradigms on their proverbial heads. Enter Risk. We don't have a ton of data on Risk yet because he's so new, but we have enough to put together a solid profile on him. I'm going to combine facts with some conjecture and speculation to thread together a seamless narrative. We will be coming back to Risk again in the future as he engages with and intersects with other stories we'll be telling. So, who is Risk? Guerrero La Casa was born into a wealthy family. Guerrero translates from Spanish to English as warrior, and La Casa means the hunt. He's a warrior on the hunt, rather apropos for a guy using the codename Risk. As the Baroness describes him in G.I. Joe issue 2, he was a bored rich boy looking for trouble. And it was back then that he got into fighting, eventually finding his way into the cage. Creator Josh Williamson in one interview talked about Risk, and he said, "His name is Risk, he's ex-CIA, kind of like a rich boy thrill seeker." While designing Risk, Williamson adds, "I have this wall of G.I. Joe toys over here," referring to a shelf, "and I would just stare at them. And I would be like, how is he different? And looking at Duke, I'm looking at Flint, I'm looking at the different characters, and I thought, you know what's missing from this lineup? A dude in a suit." The other thing Williams notes, citing a conversation he had with G.I. Joe editor Ben Abernathy, is that they do not have a John Wick-style character that can beat the crap out of people in a suit. Destro, Tomax, Zaymont wear suits, Cobra Commander wears a suit, the generals do, like the Juggler or Cabal, but no one else really on the G.I. Joe side. At some point, perhaps wanting even greater adventure and risk, or perhaps to drill some discipline into him, Guerrero joined the United States Air Force. Given his career path, it's likely he was stationed at Joint Base Langley with the 363rd ISR Wing, that's Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Wing. They're tasked with the analytical matrix that informs air, cyber, and space operations, along with full-spectrum targeting, special operations, ISR, and some other testing and advanced training, and they even create geospatial and comprehensive threat analysis, including, quote, integrated content-dominant analytical expertise, precision targeting, production, and special operations ISR support to the operational and tactical warfighter, enabling combat power in air, space, and cyberspace, end quote. I don't think it's the 70th ISR Wing. They work closely with NASA, the National Security Agency, with a heavy focus on cryptology, SIGINT, that's signals intelligence, and cybersecurity. So while there is a threat assessment component to that, his skill set was more appropriate to the 363rd, including the location. Airman La Casa then transferred his career to the Central Intelligence Agency, whose headquarters also happens to be in Langley, Virginia. See the connection? This whole time, mind you, he was still doing cage matches in his spare time. Part of his job in the CIA was actually risk assessment. What is the collateral damage of the mission? Is the mission going to be too much? And then he went into the field because he felt, if I'm going to send people out on these dangerous missions, I should also go out on them, right? If I'm going to tell someone to take a risk, I should be able to take the risk too. So we can see where he likely got his code name. I wouldn't be surprised if Risk was part of the Omega Hunter-Killer teams, which are de facto units meant to hunt down terrorist HVTs, that's high-value targets, comprised of JSOC and CIA operators. This was a 127 Echo program under Title 10. SEAL Team 6 out of Bagram Airfield began conducting covert ops alongside operators with the CIA's Special Activities Center, SAD then, and their counterterrorism pursuit teams. These Ultra teams eventually morphed into the new Omega Team program. RRC, or Regimental Reconnaissance Company, a unit within the 75th Ranger Regiment, were also conducting operations with the Omega teams. So this was DevGru, Rangers, Delta Force, aka CAG, aka Task Force Green, CIA Ground Branch, and other agents from SAC. It blended Title 10 and Title 50 authorities for some good old sheep dipping. His risk assessment skills translate to acute SA and an ability to help the team plan and execute high-risk ops. This is when he sharpened his skills in practical mission planning like MET-TC or Mission Enemy Terrain Troops Time and Civi considerations. This is one of the steps in TLP or troop leading procedures, something he would need to know. In other words, it's a way to mitigate risk while delivering maximum lethality in a package that's proportionate to the mission. He'd have to add this and refine these skills before being combat ready. Not to mention training and qualifying on all the weapons and equipment he'd need to be using. Once he started going outside the wire with the teams, he'd no doubt be heavily leveraging his ATAC device affixed to his plate carrier, and that's a general comment, not a reference to the one he wears now. He'd be able to see the AO and Red Force, Blue Force type live intel, allowing him to make live real-time risk assessments and movement suggestions. He'd also be considering domains like political, military, economic, social, information, infrastructure, physical environment, and of course time. ADM, or Army Design Methodology, or MDMP, which is military decision-making process, would help him assess the risk of an operational environment before a course of action is executed. This is where he gets to answer the who, what, where, why, when questions that complete a mission statement. The CIA does have jobs that do risk assessment, but they're referred to as multidiscipline security officers, MDSO. Many people assess risk constantly, though, like the Operations Directorate's case officers who assess, develop, recruit, and then handle assets with access to foreign intelligence, or the ground branch operators we've already talked about who assess risk, but on a smaller, mission-specific scale, which is exactly the thing that Risk would be adding to his knowledge base when he started working more closely with them. The G.I. Joe team historically has had loose ties to the CIA. Undoubtedly, some of their intel comes from fieldcraft of certain assets deployed in theaters around the globe that gets sent back stateside to the analysts, who then forward it up the chain. Some of it makes it to the PDB report, the President's Daily Brief. Some of that more actionable intel, if force-on-force kinetics is the appropriate response, gets pulsed out in op wards to SOCOM and G.I. Joe. They worked with a man known only as CIA Man in the past, like all the way back in A Real American Hero issue 6 when the team was tasked with recovering a top-secret Soviet spy plane in Afghanistan. On the Sunbow side, the team worked with an agent named Agent Burke, the dapper spy evoking the best of Roger Moore's James Bond. There is an Agent Burke in Transformers Rise of the Beast played by Michael Kelly, but the director, Stephen Caple Jr., says the jury is still out on if he'd be developed more and if he is actually that legacy character or not. Don Levine, father of the G.I. Joe action figure, was at one time commissioned by the CIA for a program called Devil Eyes to make a devil-eyed doll of Osama bin Laden as part of a larger PSYOP, psychological operation that is, to dissuade and scare people from joining Al-Qaeda. Then in Larry Hama and Herb Trimpe's G.I. Joe Special Missions, Issue 9, the team headed back into Afghanistan to rescue CIA agent Chip from the Iranians. In Special Mission 14, the team learned about a rogue CIA agent named Colin Esterhazy who'd refused to come in, went to ground in a village called Jomolungma, located in a hidden valley of the Forbidden Mountains of the Himalayas. From there, he was conducting over-the-border raids on Chinese-controlled territory. They called him the White Devil from Virginia. The Joes were tasked with tracking him down and bringing him in. They'd have a controller with them on the mission, a CIA operative named Anderson. Snake Eyes started out from a Larry Hama concept called Fury Force. The mysterious character's name there is Spook. Spook is a classic, albeit unofficial term for an agent who conducts espionage and human intelligence or human operations. That's a little different than, say, a Foreign Services Officer, FSO, or the FSS and FSRs that work at a station with the FSO. To be fair, the term can be applied to most intelligence operatives, though, not just CIA field agents, though it's most closely associated with them. Those who are on Black Ops, off the books, and in the shadows, a ghost in the wind. With 1 foot in the black world, 1 foot in the white, we have a gray man, a spook. We weren't here, we were never there, we don't exist. In the letters column, in ARAH issue 43, it says that MacSog op group spooks need covers and their files are sealed for 30 years. And someone also argued that Jinx, Kamarashikage, did some field work for the CIA during the dark years when the team had been stood down. Pretty much everyone else that doesn't come through one of the main military services is FBI, CID, NSA, DOA, which in continuity is the Domestic Operations Agency. Risk was handpicked by Hawk. He saw his work with his other engagements and wanted him on Duke's team. He's an embedded asset to Hawk, but an asset to the team as well with his particular set of skills, both a force multiplier and a risk mitigator. La Casa likes to dress in suits paired with chest rigs or plate carriers, Energon-empowered metal knuckles, steel-toed shoes, a leather belt with bullets in it, which I guess is a good place to store your ammo if you're wearing a suit. He has a scar above his right eye, a partially missing pinky finger, and a giant eagle tattoo on his back. Where all these things came from, those stories have yet to be told. Okay, I don't actually know if they're Energon-powered, but the power crackling off of his fist on this cover is reminiscent of the power from the Energon crystals. If he was investigating arms dealers, it would make sense that he lifted some tech and gear. Maybe the guy from issue 1 that he encountered made these and he was telling him not to sell off this super punch tech to Destro and Mars Industries. Bold speculation there? Let's see if it pays off. Duke mainly picked the new G.I. Joe team and, as Williamson describes it, is going to be a bit of an antagonist for Duke. In fact, Williamson said Duke is like the Cyclops to his Wolverine. He's a grenade in the team dynamics because he's kind of a jerk. This attitude is represented in the fact that he carries a gold-plated shotgun that he calls Moneymaker. This dynamic seemingly comes to a head when you look at the cover of issue 3 and see Risk fighting with Duke while the Baroness looks on appalled from the background. It makes you wonder what ties he may have through Hawk back to the other team with Flint and Lady J. Risk first appeared in 2024's G.I. Joe issue 1, born into Skybound's Energon universe. This, as a reminder, is a completely separate continuity from Larry Hama's A Real American Hero universe. When we first meet Risk in issue 1, he's in Abu Dhabi at a nightclub where he violently confronted some shady businessmen. He fought and took out all the security and told the dude not to sell to Mars Industries. And this is what I was referring to a moment ago. He was quickly called back, and in issue 2 we see him meeting the team for the first time. Just after they gotten back to base from a disastrous first mission, one which cost Rock and Roll his life and put a bunch of other Joes in medical for wounds and Energon laser burns. Needless to say, the tension was palpable, so when Risk called Rock heavy metal, Duke lashed out, yelling and hitting him in the face with a nasty right hook. Duke was angry that this new guy disrespected his friend and teammate. Being the cage fighter that he was, Risk welcomed the punch as an invitation to fight, and the two went at it right in front of Hawk and the team. As the fight spilled over into issue 3, Hawk and the Baroness looked on, with Hawk saying it's best to let it out here so it doesn't carry into the field. Right when Duke was going for the kill strike and Risk was powering up his metal knuckles, they were interrupted by Stalker's blade that impaled itself in the wall right between their faces. It was Stalker's dressing down that whipped them both back into shape. They pivoted to working in unison as their attention turned to a captured rifle, a laser rifle, and the Cobra insignia that was right on it. They were learning there was a new player in town that may or may not be connected to Destro's Mars Industries. Word came in from Clutch that the enemy was going to be moving on Washington, D.C. to capture Dr. Monev. Clutch was undercover and embedded with Cobra and the Crimson Guard, so it was a huge risk for him to find a moment to report back to the team. Risk told them, though, that Dr. Monev, that's Dr. Venom who created the brainwave scanner, was already in custody and about to testify before Congress. They knew their new mission, which was get to Monev before the opposition did. Duke intercepted Monev's transport with an SUV while the Baroness and Risk parachuted down on G.I. Joe motorcycles. Risk kicked the Crimson Guard operative in the face, looking like he cracked and broke the CG's neck in the process. And that's when they ran into Tomax and Zaymont driving a Stinger Jeep. Where will it go from here? We'll have to read issue 4 and beyond to find out. There's still a lot to learn about Risk as we head into the future, learning more about his future tales while also uncovering more details about his past. Ben Abernathy and Josh Williamson, not sure which one actually said this, wrote in the letters page of issue 3 that they both hope Risk makes the jump to toys and gets a G.I. Joe classified figure. So what will happen? We'll have to wait and see, which means that's a wrap on this one, my friends. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.